Hello, everyone. Welcome to Console Room 2026. This is a virtual panel all about the exciting world of Zoe Herriot, companion to the Second Doctor, played by the lovely and talented Wendy Padbury. My name is Rob Levy. I am going to be moderating this panel for all of you, and I'm a writer who's in several books, and I've moderated panels at several conventions, and I've been a massive fan of Doctor Who since 1984, and it's good to be here. And I am joined by several amazing people who are going to shed some light on this topic. The first is Kathryn. Say hello, Kathryn.
Hello. And I'm also in several books as well, writing about Zoe in Children of Time, The Companions of Doctor Who, and a book that several of you guys are also in, Outside In Regenerates, where I'm talking about the Crotons, which is an episode with Zoe that I like.
Nice. Stephen, how are you tonight?
Hi, I'm doing well. I'm Stephen Warren Hill. I'm the head writer of Red, White, and Who, the Story of Doctor Who in America, and the program director for Chicago TARDIS and creator of several Doctor Who websites that you probably know about.
And Ben, how are you today?
Great. My name is Ben Ellis. I have been with Console Room since our very first convention in 2014. I also direct the Console Room radio players, where we do radio productions of missing episodes.
That's awesome. So we are diving into the world of Zoe Herriot, which is fantastic because I think she's a companion that a lot of people sort of don't think about as much as they should. And I guess my question for each of you, and we'll start with Ben, is what was the first time you saw Zoe on screen?
Well, the first time I saw Zoe on screen was The Five Doctors. And it was my very first episode of Doctor Who that I'd seen. So I'm like incredibly confused. And then we have this one scene where a gentleman in a kilt and a woman in a very silvery outfit are talking to the Doctor. I have no idea what's going on, but I'm enjoying it. So it made me more curious about Zoe and Zoe's adventures with Jamie and the Doctor.
Nice. Stephen?
I don't know for sure. I knew about Zoe because I became a Doctor Who fan in 1975, but didn't see most of the black and white episodes until many years later.
Yeah.
Although I may have seen an episode at a convention. I know I saw the War Games at TARDIS 21, which was in 1984, but I had also seen The Five Doctors when it aired in the US. So that probably was my first, but I also may have read a Target novelization with her character in it before then. I'm not certain.
Kathryn?
Well, let's see. On TV, we started with KTCA airing Tom Baker, but I was also traveling to other conventions and people were showing like The Mind Robber, because I remember seeing that one right off the bat. And that was really, really fascinating to me. I'd also been doing a lot of research for the Target novelizations because I was supposed to be supposedly writing fan fiction about the Doctor, and I needed to do background. So I was digging all over the place.
Yeah,
I think definitely The Mind Robber. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think my introduction was through a very sort of fan copy of The Mind Robber at one of the TARDIS cons in St. Louis. And I should have broadened this to say first time they discovered Zoe is to include, because Stephen was smart, the Target books for a lot of people were the gateway, or Doctor Who: A Celebration was also the sort of a way we sort of found out about her as well.
Seeing her in that.
And then we sort of like knew who she was, we knew about the character, but it was always kind of this like, what is this kind of thing? And then you see him on screen and you're like, ooh, but I remember watching The Mind Robber with no context before or after the episodes, what came before or after it, and just going, what the hell is this? And I was struck that compared to what I'd seen before with other companions, just how different she was, which I really enjoyed. And I know this is one of the things, Ben, you want to talk about, when we talk about our favorite episodes and things, some of her episodes are missing. Not as many as others. I think that we're very fortunate in that, more so than like Victoria or Ben and Polly, we get more of a run of her more than any of the other Troutman companions, except maybe Jamie. But I think that's made my appreciation of her more because I get more of a complete picture between the magazine and the books and everything else. So I'm wondering, do you think that fans need to see a particular missing episode of hers to feel complete, or is there a missing episode of hers that you would like to see that isn't out there?
Well, if they want to get a complete, if they want to see a great debut of Zoe, I recommend the Wheel in Space episode 3, because she's in episode 2, which doesn't exist. You get to know her, but you get to know more of her in episode 3. And I would definitely like to see more episodes of the Space Pirates, because she's like the best part of that story.
Yeah. Kathryn?
I'd go with Will in Space too, because I want to get the very beginning where we actually first saw her and our opinion of her evolve if you actually were able to watch her first beginning show, because it always seems like with the companions, their very first episode is always the best one. Turlo, where the last one was the best. But anyhow.
Stephen?
I think I would like to see the Space Pirates. As much as I do like to see character debut stories, I think we get a character who is mature already when we first meet her, but hasn't learned the Doctor's way of life yet. When we see her in the Space Pirates, she's already been immersed in that, and she has matured further, and so she's much more well-rounded by that point. And I like the idea of watching her character as she acclimatizes to the TARDIS, but I think I would enjoy the Space Pirates more, knowing that she's already got it all up here and she's doing her thing.
I'm going to mix it up a little bit and say I want to see the missing episode stuff that we don't have from the invasion. I just think that's an episode where we really get to see that intellectual aspect of her sort of really played out, which I really like. And that kind of leads into my sort of next topic I want to talk about. You feel free to jump in, whoever wants to do this, but she's one of the more unique companions in that she is arguably an intellectual equal of the Doctor, which by the time I'm watching the show at this point, I'm super excited about. She's not a screamer. She's confident. She doesn't take any sort of like male mumbo jumbo. And she's for the first time in the show, the balance of brains and also someone who can like defend themselves. And I think that's part of the reason that I find her as a companion so appealing. And I'm just wondering what you guys all think of that.
Yeah, I like her.
Go ahead, Kathryn.
No, go ahead.
I like her because she's the Doctor's equal in many ways. She's not as smart as the Doctor, but she's not the typical screaming companion.
And as a retired librarian, I like the fact that she's a librarian. We're actually getting librarians into the mix. And that's one of the reasons why I like the Croton so much, is also because she knows how to organize learning systems. And she basically says she's just the Doctor's almost as smart as I am. I love that line. She's confident in her knowledge of how things work.
Yeah, there's different ways of different definitions of intelligence and different ways of measuring intelligence, and I think in some ways she exceeds the Doctor in intelligence, and in other ways she certainly does not have the Doctor's depth of knowledge or experience. But I think she exceeds his intelligence in certain measurable ways.
The thing I love about that dynamic, though, is that for once the Doctor has to change how he's talking to a companion, because he's like, he has to like almost cut to shorthand, right? Because she really understands stuff, and she can do a lot of the exposition, sort of what they call technobabble, right? She can do it, and you get to see Troughton doing more with the Doctor because she's doing the technobabble, and it sets up Frasier to do more of the comedy. It's a really interesting dynamic that I really loved for the end of his run, and I almost wish we got a little more of that, because I thought that whole dynamic was really, really great to watch.
That is really why her character works so well with Jamie. and you can pair the two of them off without the doctor.
Yeah.
And it really makes storytelling easy, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And you also get this dynamic with her and Jamie, with this idea of like the past and the future as companions. And they haven't done this. And I wish they'd go back to it, because it's so great to have a companion that's from, the future, that knows all of this stuff, that can rival the doctor and is just really well-rounded.
Mhm.
And then Jamie, who is not by any means dumb, but just he's not from that time frame. And
Mhm.
so that dynamic it's a really cool, meaty thing to play
Mhm.
with. And just watching these three actors just do that is really
Yeah.
fantastic.
Because you can't say Jamie's ignorant, because he's got a lot of common sense and he knows when to apply it.
And in the same way that she, rivals the doctor with intelligence, she also knows how to talk to Jamie, which I
Mhm.
think makes her even more detailed, because sometimes the way companions talk to each other is harder to write than how the companion asks the doctor questions.
I think
I agree.
your perspective on the future companion with a past companion, they touched a little bit on that with Vicky.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say too.
When Barbara
Yeah.
wants to give her aspirin, if I remember
Mhm.
right, she says,
Yeah.
"I've never heard of aspirin."
Yeah. Well, I
When she
mean,
calls the Beatles classical musicians too.
Well, yeah, that too.
which is great. I mean, but I wish they go, as they do the new episodes, I wish they'd kind of go back to that a little more. But yeah, and I think that her dynamic is just really interesting, in that it's sort of like, I want to use the word flex companion, right? Because like she could literally be put, I think, in any type of a story and find some way for her character not to be relevant or a part of the story, or just sort of like easily distant and put away,
Mhm.
and come back. She's not going to be put asleep for a whole episode or anything like that.
Yeah.
Which I find incredibly fascinating for a character.
Well, you just made me think of there's the scene in The Mind Robber where she isn't afraid of, and I can't remember exactly,
The
she
caucus?
isn't afraid of something because she has not had the exposure to that
Oh,
fictional character. Was
yeah,
it the
the Medusa.
carcass?
The
Or is it
carcass is the
because the
cartoon
carcass is
character.
from
No,
Harry
she
It's
knows
Medusa.
who the carcass is. It's something else.
It's the
Medusa?
Medusa. She doesn't know what the Medusa is.
Okay. And she said, and that's simply because she's so far in the future, she's not familiar with that. So it has no mental effect on her. It's an
Mhm.
interesting little storytelling kind of, I don't know what, not a twist, but a way of pointing out that it's not always what you know. Sometimes it's what you don't know
Mhm.
that can help you out.
And I also think too that when you get Zoe, you get, as we've touched upon, a sort of an action companion as well that can take care of herself. Do we
Mhm.
have any sort of insights from you guys about those kind of moments of her in the series?
I can envision her right now fighting the carcass, but that scene is kind of silly
Yeah.
and didn't look like it had been quite rehearsed enough. But I mean, that's pure physical
Yeah.
fight.
I'd like to, did she figure out that the Cybermen will be affected by the camera flash and the invasion?
I think so.
Yeah. So I thought that was really inventive.
Mhm.
Yeah, one of the other things that I sort of really like about Zoe as a companion is this idea of, we're watching a character that wants to be more human, that wants to like have better people skills. Because the one
Mhm.
thing necessarily about Zoe is she doesn't necessarily have the most perfect people skills, which is fine, right? But we're
Mhm.
watching a companion arc where, she's like, oh, I need to be more human.
Mhm.
I don't want to compare her to like Sheldon from TV, but almost like that, where you have to sort of learn the subtleties of being really intelligent, but yet have the life experiences and the day-to-day knowledge to sort of be more human. I think that search for her being human is really interesting as well.
I think that it's
I
prompt.
kind
I
of-
think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kath.
No, go ahead, Ben.
I think she gets kind of prompted by that in the Wheel in Space, because there's a line in the Wheel in Space where I think Jarvis calls her a robot.
Yeah.
And that takes her aback. And I think one of the reasons she goes with the doctor was she doesn't want to be she doesn't want to like be a robotic person. She wants to learn more about the universe, which is a great trait of her, the character, in my opinion.
And it's really good writing for that time period to actually think about autism and Asperger's. And there was actually, it wasn't mentioned by those terms, of course, because they didn't know at that time. But it was just that fear that you know too much and you are not empathic to people, which is why with the Tales of the TARDIS, where we had the fact that, oh, she's now going into her third inauguration as president, like Zoe in politics. But the problem is, I think that was more of the fact that she's getting subconscious prompts from remembering the doctor vaguely and knowing that she's the one who could actually make this a better society.
Yeah. And I think, the great thing as well about her as a companion is we're watching this journey and we're watching someone struggle with this, right? This is like a whole new thing for Doctor Who. It's like the companion sort of is, one, the companion's confident. Two, the companion is just as smart as the doctor. Three, she never complains about, oh, I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home. Right. She is very, very much as curious as the doctor in terms of wanting to sort of jump in the TARDIS and just go across the universe. And I think that's pretty fantastic. And you see that. But I also think that as much as we talk about her being really smart and really savvy and also kind of having a little bit of a wit, in there, that there is a ferocious bravery to her too, that I love. And I'll start with that. My favorite moment of that is just watching her in Seeds of Death. I just think she's really like not a willowing person in that at all. That's probably one of my favorite stories, to see that aspect of Zoe's character come out.
And also War Games, where she's standing up to these heads of armies and going, "Oh, you better listen to him."
So in the Seeds of Death, isn't she the one that has to make it into the room to turn the temperature, to turn the thermostat up?
Yeah.
While they're in the room with her, and she has to sneak by them or something. Yeah, that's a little bit. A little bit pantomime look, behind you, but it's still a tense moment, right? It's still, she's in the room with the monsters and she's got to get to where she's got to go. And that's a brave choice to do that.
Yeah. I like it when she makes the computer implode in the invasion.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, and she's using this language that no one has ever heard of, but the point is, she's Zoe Herriot, and she's not going to be messed with.
Yeah. Is there any particular moments for each of you that you really love and appreciate with her as a companion, either from the books, the audios, or on TV, anything?
I still like the scene in the Crotons where she's basically out, she's gotten the high score and the doctor's trying to beat her score and doing everything backwards. And that whole line, he's almost as smart as I am. Yes.
I like the scene in the invasion where she girls it up with Isabel and is Isabel's model. Because it just shows she wants to do normal stuff, like a normal. Is she supposed to be a teenager when she travels with the doctor? Is that ever determined?
I think I always thought of her as being as a teenager, or like a
she
young
wants to do
adolescent.
difficult teenage things, and being a fashion model is one of them. Or modeling for Isabel is one of them.
And it also makes her a little more feminine, which I think is one of the things they were trying to do too.
For me, I'm thinking of in the War Games when she and Jamie are trying to like get the Arturo Villa and the other rebels to talk to each other, and she's clearly in charge, but Jamie has to be the figurehead in charge, because he's the man, and they wouldn't listen to the girl, right? So But you know, that whole segment there, she is very obviously the one running the show. I love that.
It's interesting too, because we've had this lead up with her before at this time where she's very smart and wily and that, and we sort of see her at certain times wanting to be an ordinary kid, but also really struggling to sort of be accepted. And I think that, you know, because she's so smart and because she is sort of so in tune to the world around her and things, that I think it's hard for her to build relationships. And I think that you sort of see this as she's in the TARDIS. Like initially it's kind of weird, and it just sort of builds into a relationship where eventually we get that very popular Troughton family kind of vibe with the companions and the Doctor. And I think it works so well that, you know, with both her and Jamie, you're like noticeably upset when the Time Lords give her, you know, no memory of anything. You know, you have to wonder what that does to her emotional growth and her emotional development after she gets sent home.
Yeah, they cover that somewhat in
Yeah.
the Companion Chronicles. There's 3 of them they have: the
Yeah.
Fear of the Daleks, Echoes of Grey, and then the one that Fraser reads her part, and that's the Glorious Revolution, because they stress her memory and the fact that she has vague memories of what has been erased. And most of the episodes is more of her trying to remember where this particular character came from. I think they overplayed that too much in the Companion Chronicles, but it's still a part of her life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do we think of the contrast of her as a companion for the Second Doctor as opposed to Polly or Victoria?
She's not a screamer. She's smarter, you know. She's curious. She, you know,
She screams mind robber, but it's so out of character for her.
Yeah, but I think, like, you know, if you look at it, she wanted to go on the TARDIS with it. Well, she sneaks into like something at the end of it, Wheel in Space, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But she has that curiosity to go. Polly and Ben just walk onto the TARDIS and the smugglers, and they're like, yeah, whatever, we're stuck now. And then Victoria's father dies, so there really is no alternative but for her to go with the Doctor and Jamie.
Yeah.
So it's her choice to travel.
Yes, it's her choice.
Which I think is interesting because she sort of makes this choice more than the other 2 female companions of that period. And she also is more, I think, instinctively curious as well.
Yeah.
And sort of more exploratory. Like she really, one of the things I love about the way that she's portrayed is like you can almost see the wheels turning in her brain.
Oh yes.
As a companion, which is not an easy thing to act, but you can see it, right? You really like. I noticed that a lot in the Crotons, which you had talked about, Kathryn. You sort of see how the brain goes from A to B to C to D with her, which is really interesting, and it's an interesting sort of expose in how the companion views the world around them, and it kind of flips that narrative from what we'd had before with Troughton as well, which I think is interesting.
I think we're talking mainly from the perspective of the story and the character, but of course, the character was developed specifically to address that despair. That okay, Victoria and Jamie are too similar with too little knowledge of technology and things like that. So now that we know that Victoria is leaving and Jamie is staying, our next character needs to be different. So, I mean, we understand that the character was built that way, but it's still smart and the right thing to do, isn't it? And she plays it so well. Wendy does.
Yeah. Polly was again a future, well, not far future, but she was still paired more with Ben than she was with Jamie. So having that contrast of a few more decades distance
Mhm.
helped a little bit more because he kind of adopted her smart little sister in a way.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that, yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic point that you made, Stephen. And I think the other interesting thing about that, though, is that, it's really hard to come up with that idea as a character on paper and then execute it where it works.
Mhm.
It's really, really fantastic how literally all of Troughton's companions within reason hit, right? They sort of all have things that make them relatable. But I think Zoe, for me, was a lot more relatable for me to watch than Victoria when I first watched her. And I don't know if it's because Victoria was screaming all the time, but I felt like
Brian.
Zoe was much more of a like my entryway into the world of the Second Doctor was a better way to do that.
Well, when we first see Victoria in Evil of the Daleks, she's been kidnapped. When we first meet Zoe, she's the librarian on the wheel in space,
Yeah.
It's just, it makes her more enduring to me because instead of the past couple of companions who scream a lot like Polly and Victoria did, you have this really intelligent, smart companion who thirsts for knowledge and wants to share her knowledge.
Yeah. I mean, Polly was basically relied on because she was an office assistant at one point, but people kept coming to Zoe for help with their equations and all their research in the Wheel of Space. So actually having someone that people depend on was a nice touch.
Yeah. Yeah. And in a way, I was just thinking about this. She kind of set the stage for Liz Shaw in the next season. Because Liz was a scientist. She was smart. She wasn't a typical screamer. So,
and I thought that was an interesting dynamic I was going to touch upon, and I'm glad you brought it up because it worked so well with Wendy, and it didn't really get a chance to work very well with Liz Shaw. Do we think it's just because the way the show changed from black and white to color and the era is changing that sort of this idea of an intellectual equal to the Doctor doesn't work? Or why is her characterization of a super smart companion so unique and so special?
You mean for Liz Shaw, or are you talking for Zoe?
Oh, Zoe.
Okay. Well, she's
more
more
Zoe
because she's from the far future, whereas Liz Shaw was present day, and we still had the male figures who don't like that whole idea. Whereas Zoe, because she's a little girl, even though she was a teenager, they basically could accept her a lot easier than an adult woman, basically being just as competent as a doctor.
I think the fans and the viewers at the time didn't like that. They wanted a Victoria, and that's why in Series 8 we get Joe Grant, But I digress.
Yeah. I mean, I think, go ahead.
For me, I think I really like Liz Shaw, and I like the way Caroline John plays Liz Shaw. But Liz Shaw is very businesslike. She's very straightforward and probably just as smart as Zoe. But Zoe was way more adventurous and more playful. So, as much as I admire the character of Liz Shaw, Zoe's more fun.
Now, do we think that I did want to talk about that aspect of it, so I'm glad you brought that up. She is fun and she is sort of like playful. Is that something you think that comes out from the relationship with Jamie and to a certain extent the Doctor, or do you think that that's something that was in her and it just sort of happens?
I think part of it has to do with her character's age, but I think honestly, I feel like it has mostly to do with how welcome she was made to feel on set.
Yes.
And how comfortable they were all with working with each other.
Yeah.
And just they were playful when the cameras weren't on.
Yeah.
So that comes across. And
yeah.
I mean, how lucky do you get when you're casting a part like that to get Wendy Padbury?
Yeah.
Who was perfect for it.
Yeah.
Right?
I think her casting was perfect. And I also think, you have to give her a certain amount of credit because performing in a cast with Patrick and Jamie and Frasier at that time was not easy, because those two had their own almost sort of like language developed, and their prank system, especially during the invasion when they're both, a little tipsy and things, right? She sort of walked into something that could have been very difficult, and it's so seamless and comfortable. And I think that, Steve, I think you're right that Wendy Padbury's comfort on that set reflects in sort of Zoe being so comfortable in the TARDIS. I think that's a pretty good correlation.
But I think you also have to bring in the script writers too, because you had a changeover in script writers between Troughton and Pertwee, didn't we? And I think it could have been the resistance to change.
Well, Terrence Dix was the one of the script editor for season 6, and then he went into season 7.
I believe so. Yeah. But I also think too, that's the other thing I wanted to sort of touch upon, is like, she's very well written for. Pretty much from the start of her run to the end, it's a character that's really well written. Victoria probably could have been, but it's a little choppy. But just the fact that we've got a companion that is this well written, this well developed, and has this much chemistry with her co-stars is really, I think, one of the fundamentally unique aspects of the show throughout its history, is that we get this. And I just think it's really cool.
Yeah, because you've got that playfulness between the three of them. It worked out really well, because he was really playful with the Doctor as well as Jamie. It worked out.
Yeah.
When you watch them on screen, you don't see, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of tension between the characters, and it shows.
Which is great. I mean, it's one of the things I love about that era of Doctor Who is it's funny and terrifying at the same time, which I really, really loved, right? And it allows Troughton to sort of explore that line between the cosmic hobo and the cosmic sort of scientist doctor guy, which I really love. Steve brought this up, and I think it's a good place to jump in. I want to talk about Wendy Padbury a little bit. She's a delight.
It's going to be at the convention.
Can I do a quick plug, or should I wait till the end?
Why don't you do a quick plug now? And now a word from our sponsor.
I'll be interviewing Wendy Sunday afternoon on stage, so I'm excited.
She's lovely.
Yes.
She's fantastic. Thanks to her, we have Matt Smith.
Yes.
But I'm sure you'll touch upon that when you do your chat. But definitely. I just think that it's really hard to gauge her talent level just by watching the episodes. I think that you have to almost see her at a convention to really sort of get the idea. I mean, you can watch the companion and get it, but when you hear her talk about the companion, her role as a companion, that you really see how much thought and texture she put into the role, which I really never thought of when I was watching it, up until probably I saw the War Games. I really started to think about, wow, this is a really nuanced character. And I think too, when you watch the Five Doctors, which I think, Ben, you talked about before, we see her as sort of a ghost with Jamie, but she's sort of the only one of those like spirit companions that we meet that sort of still retains sort of the attitudes and the vibe of the companion from when they were on the show.
I would say so.
It's not clunky.
Yeah. And because Jamie in the Five Doctors comes off a little helpless, but seeing Wendy in the Five Doctors and then watching her in episodes after that, he seems like the same character we're seeing.
Yeah, exactly. Now, are there any other, this is always the woulda, coulda, shoulda part of the panel that's fun. Are there any stories or future events in the history of Doctor Who after she left the TARDIS that we would love to have seen her in or come back and do? And then also, what other Doctors would you have liked to see her with?
I would have loved to see it with Jodie.
That would have been great.
Well done. I think I would like to have seen her just for the dynamic of it. Would have liked to have seen her with the Capaldi doctor, just
Yeah.
because it would have been interesting, because he did not suffer fools. And I think that the fact that she was really smart, I think that would have been a very interesting dynamic as
She
well.
would not suffer fools either. So that would have been a neat clash.
Yeah.
If they had done the war games differently, where Jamie was the one who lost his memory, but maybe they sent her with the Pertwee doctor to Earth, I think that would have been kind of cool. I know it's a whole different storyline I'm talking about. That never happened. But just like as the doctor's advisor, like maybe the doctor's lost his memory, but Zoe would be there to say, "Oh, doctor, remember when this happened? And remember this is Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart." That would have been cool.
Yeah.
Except she would have hijacked the TARDIS and taken off.
That's true.
I almost would like to see her on Gallifrey, telling all the Time Lords how they can streamline everything and make everything more efficient.
Organize her library.
Or I'd love a scene with her in the TARDIS library where like she's cataloging the TARDIS library and it's driving the Doctor nuts because he can't find something. I think
I'm going to plug because I did something similar in the Companions Time. I wrote a short story with Zoe.
Yes, you did.
The TARDIS library, and the TARDIS library keep hiding it from her.
Yes, you did. I also think too that it would have been cool to see her sort of go back for Three Doctors. I would think her with Joe Grant would have been a fascinating dynamic to see, as well as Pertwee with Jamie. I just think that would have been a hoot. I also wonder how her as a companion would have stacked up against the Delgado Master. Like if she's not afraid of the Doctor, she's not going to be messing around with anybody else that's a Time Lord either. And I think that would have been kind of cool to explore.
But unfortunately, I think she could get very easily hypnotized, though.
Yeah, you're right. Yep. Hypnosis is not her friend.
No.
Do you guys have any particular sort of convention memories of seeing Wendy? I know Steven's had her a couple times at TARDIS and things, but do you guys have any memories you want to share of her at conventions or anything?
Well, I would share one. So I met her. She was at the concert room in 2016. And I couldn't get her autograph because she was busy. So I went to Chicago TARDIS that same year, and I was able to get her autograph. And I said, "Oh, I saw you in Minnesota, and I know you had to go out for a smoke break, but thank you for autographing this." "Oh, that's lovely, dear. That's lovely." And my favorite part of her being at concert room is at the after party for the con. She gave me a hug, which I just thought was so cool.
I also I did a panel with all the Troughton companions at Chicago TARDIS that were there for that year, and I got a hug, and I was like, it kind of took me back because you very much set this wall of like they're here and you're here. I'm like, oh, I got a hug. I'm like, wow, yeah. She's great. Everyone coming to this convention is going to be amazed at how personable she is. And one of the things I really liked about the two times I've seen her conventions is that how much she remembers about the era. Also, how much she talks about it in a context that isn't like, oh, it was just the monster of the week. She doesn't really slag it off. She's very sort of respectful of the material. And you also, I think, too, really does a great job of explaining sort of not just the character building, but sort of the world building that they were all trying to do as they created the show at the time, which I thought was great.
I had a chance to interview her with her daughter at Gallifrey One. I think it was earlier this year. It might have been the year before. I forget exactly, but that was fun to be able to, because I asked a lot of questions of Wendy about her childhood and what she wanted to be when she was a kid, and her like everyday experiences. What did she do? Did she read a lot? Did she, what did she like to do? And that was an interesting dynamic having her own daughter there to be able to bounce similar thoughts off of her, like, well, and when I was a kid, Mom wouldn't let me do that kind of thing. So That was it. That was a fun interview to do. I was really appreciated. I really appreciated being able to do that.
Yeah, the other thing I love too is that she could give it back to Frasier at a convention, which I think is, kind of daunting if you're doing a panel with Frasier Hines because he's larger than life, and she holds her own pretty well. So
I remember
Kathryn?
one.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I remember one memory from our pre-con party we had, and a picture of her playfully like stabbing Fraser with a cake fork, and it's just the funniest thing. And I showed it to Nicola Bryant at Console Room, and she thought it was hilarious.
Kathryn, do you have anything?
No.
Okay. One of the things we're supposed to talk to this panel is sort of how she has a place in the pantheon of companions. Where do you guys think that Zoe falls between, and this is covering both series, and the audios and everything, where do you think she stands in sort of the order of Doctor Who companions?
My first thought is underappreciated, but
Yes.
at the same time, it's hard because every companion has their champions among the fans, right? And even like when you started the panel, Rob, you even said that you thought she was one of the less talked about companions. I don't quite
Yeah.
remember exactly how
Yeah.
you put it, but something like that. And that's true. But here we are talking about how much we appreciate
Yeah.
Zoe and Wendy, and at the same time, it's like yeah.
I mean, I was really excited when we found we were doing this panel because I always like sort of these older companions from the 60s sort of getting their due, and sort of the fans really can appreciate that era of the show more through their lens. And that's one of the, I mean, this panel was like really fantastic for me because I think that, whenever someone says, oh, the companion is always like this or that, they always sort of give you this cookie cutter dynamic of what a companion is, and you stop and you say, well, wait, there's Zoe. And then and that's one of the things I think makes her so incredibly fascinating. I think out of the new series, I think they really could have made Martha kind of Zoe-esque in terms of like how she is smart in many ways as the doctor, and sort of how she views the world and how she can hold her own. But I think now they can't write. I don't think they could write for Zoe now like they did for Zoe back then. I think it's a really unique moment in time for the show that they wrote for her. So I think that one of the things that I appreciate about her as a companion, and one of the reasons why she's probably in my top 5, is that she came along at the right time, at the right place, but also took advantage of it. The writers took advantage of it. The performers took advantage of it. And we get this really complete companion. And I think that works really well in her favor.
I think the reason why she's kind of forgotten in a way is because a lot of the PBS stations kept airing Tom's era over and over and over, and didn't get around to showing the Troughton episodes. So people are quite easy to forget her, except for those who basically hunt down her episodes.
Well, because like Tom's episodes aired first in the US, they sold the Troughton package after Tom.
Yeah.
Rob is extrapolating. Sorry, extrapolating from what you just asked, Rob, and while you were talking, you were saying that you don't think they could write for Zoe today. Do you think that when you say that, are you thinking of Dr. Companion, Zoe, just those two characters? Or do you think that Zoe could work today with other companions as a part of a team?
Oh, that's a fascinating. I think she could work with other companions, but I think that the relationship with the doctor is more interesting. Does that make sense to you to follow up?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, I love the idea of a multi-companion TARDIS sometimes, but sometimes I also don't. It just kind of depends on the actress and people. And I think she does both really well. But the dynamic with the doctor is really interesting because even though the Troughton doctor accepts her as an intellectual sort of equal, not a rival, but an equal, but he also feels this very protective nature towards her that I think is very beautiful, right?
Mhm.
Every
Yeah.
doctor is sort of protective of the companion, right? That kind of comes with the gig. But at the same time, it's a very, I just feel that that is a very, and maybe this is me projecting, but I just feel that's a very special relationship that we don't get with a lot of the other
Mhm.
doctors and companions. We do certainly get it with Joe and
Mhm.
the current doctor. We get it with
Hmm.
Karen Gillan and Matt Smith's doctor, and
I would-
certainly other
I would
things. But
this though. I would kind of compare Belinda and the Doctor to the Doctor and Zoe.
oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Belinda's very assertive. You know, she's curious. She doesn't really take any guff, and she's studying to be. She's going to be a doctor at some point. So
Yeah. But I also think too, and Kathryn, you brought this up before, which I thought was really great. It made me sort of my wheels spin on this, is that she's a librarian, which means her thought process, I'm assuming, because I think you and I both worked in libraries, is very sort of methodical. You almost think by numbers and catalogs and things. And I know that there's the whole math aspect of it too, but I think the way that she goes about solving problems and facing the world is really influenced by what her profession is. And sometimes they don't necessarily do that in Doctor Who, where like they suddenly forget that, what their career thing was when they encounter something.
Yeah.
And I think that's another glorious sort of aspect of her too, is that, you get a companion that is very methodical, but also curious about the world, like we talked about, and also willing to admit that there's more to learn,
Mhm.
which I think is
And
great.
also willing to connect things with other
Yeah.
seemingly unrelated items of
Yeah.
knowledge, but that's where you got. I'm sorry, that's what part of being a librarian is. You basically are trying to organize things and then going, oh, but this is similar to this, and I can connect this over here.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden they snap together and works.
Yeah. As we start to wind down our panel on the fantastic Zoe Herriot, my thought for each of you is, and you can just chime in and cover this however you want, is like, what is your favorite just all around thing about Zoe? Like if you were talking to somebody that had never ever known anything about Zoe Herriot as a companion, what would your sales pitch for them to be, to like, hey, watch this companion and like her?
Hmm.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm thinking that she's deceptive. Her appearance is deceptive, right? She's tiny and
Mm.
and she's very small frame, and nobody will suspect just how much power she has up here. And she's willing to fight, and she's not afraid. She doesn't have that kind of thing. So I think that's probably one of the best secret powers that Zoe has. Is appearances are very deceptive when it comes to Zoe.
Well, that's a lovely summary.
Yeah, that's kind of
Because
okay.
she's
We're done.
trying to be modern day. She have modern day outfits in fashion, but she's incredibly smart. And I just love the fact that her wit is that she does not let people discard her. She basically will come right back with a reply.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To me, Zoe is one of the reasons I studied library science. Because there's a Doctor Who character who's a librarian. I love books and reading.
Mhm.
And her curiosity inspires me every day.
Again, well said. I think, for me, building off of everything that you guys said, is I think it's sort of like the whole total package. You get someone that is intellectual, but also modern. You get someone that's sort of curious, but also well read.
Mhm.
And these dualisms that we constantly get with her, someone who's super smart, but can also, beat somebody up. And also someone that is both at times very vulnerable. I don't think we've talked about this a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but there are times when her companion is very vulnerable in a way that we hadn't seen with a lot of the other previous companions in that era, which I thought was really fantastic as well.
Mhm.
So yes, please watch. I mean, if you're watching this panel and you don't really know much about Zoe Herriot, or maybe you've seen a couple stories, dive in, just dive in headlong. That's what my recommendation is. Pick a story and go. Crotons, I think you're right, Kathryn's a good place to go, as well as Mind Robber. But by all means,
War Games, I'd
Okay.
recommend the full experience, not the shortened version, because they cut off many scenes.
Yeah. If you want to see Wendy playing a way different character in Doctor Who, I would recommend listening to the Big Finish audio Davros, because she plays a character who's in love with Davros and can see nothing wrong with him.
yeah, I forgot that she did that. That's yeah. You're right. You're totally, completely right. And
Or the Lorraine band, so not
Exactly.
McFly. So we'll
Yeah.
just learn.
And yes, Wheel in Space is great to go. When you see the Dominators, be patient. We'll get there.
She does have moments in the Dominators.
She does have moments in the Dominators as well. And I think that's sort of the one where she gets, of all of her stories, where she gets a little lost. I think that's probably the one. But a lot of the times they'll do that. They'll write a companion at the beginning and get a great opening story, and then they sort of pull back a little. And I think that's what that is. But don't let that discourage you. But please, discover the fantastic world of Zoe Herriot. And as we wind down, I just want to thank each of our panelists for being on our panel, and also remind you that if you go to console-room.org, you can find out all things about the convention. You can go to that website, get information on the convention at all times, and also check out the convention socials, because you can see all the current happenings that are going on and see other Whovians and things like that. And this is a very important thing, because you're all here for Console Room. Now more than ever, support your local convention, support your local content makers and the people that are fan makers in your community, whether they're writing books or doing panels or writing scripts for movies or whatever. Support all those folks, and please do that. But please check out Console Room. It's a fantastic convention. We're glad everyone's here. And you can find me, Rob Levy, under all of my socials, under Instagram, and also on Facebook and Blue Sky. And if you go to those outlets, you can figure out where my radio shows are and my podcast that I co-host called Modern Musicology, and all that other stuff is as well. Find people of Wholandia that are here with me. Where can they find you?
I'm primarily just on Facebook for right now, but just under Ben Ellis.
You can find me on Facebook under my full name.
You can find me at my website, KathrynSullivan.com, on Facebook. If you come to the convention, come to the Artist Alley, because I will have this book there for sale, as well as my own books. And I think Nick will have Fabulous.
Yeah, fantastic.
Fantastic. Which has other people who came into Doctor Who fandom and their origin stories.
Ooh. And Ben, would you like to remind people one more time, if they're watching this before Sunday at the convention, when is your panel with Wendy Padbury?
It is at 4:30 p.m. on the main stage on Sunday.
So Sunday, as they used to say when I was growing up. So thank you all for sharing your thoughts and memories of Zoe Herriot and Wendy Padbury, and your love and passion of Doctor Who. Thank you for participating, and thank you, listeners and viewers and interlopers, wherever you are, for your time and attention. Hope you're safe and well. Be nice, be kind, and go forth and do good things in the world.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.